Right, again, we're still working with factoring of our quadratics. This time we're going to look at quadratics that are in the form ax squared plus bx plus c, but we're going to restrict our a. So we're going to have a equals 1. So we're not going to have a number other than 1 there. Okay, so this is the next process. Common factor, difference of squares, perfect squares, and what happens if it's none of those things? Well, we move on. Okay, so the next easiest type of factoring is when a equals positive 1. Now, because a is 1, the two factors will have an x at the beginning of each brackets. Okay, so what that means is both brackets will look like this, where we have just an x in the first position, right? So that's the easiest part that we can do. Then what happens is if that c is positive, so we want to look at when c is positive, what will happen? Okay, so we're looking at that. So when c is positive, that means the two brackets will have the same sign. They'll either be both positive or they'll both be negative. And the way we then actually look at question here, so let's look at these, is we actually read it backwards. Okay, so we're going to read our question backwards each time. So there's three things that we're going to look at. So first of all, if I read backwards, I have the number 12. So that means the two numbers have to multiply to give me 12. I also know that I have, because I multiplied to give me 12, I have a plus sign. So that means that they have to add, okay, so that's the important thing. They have to add to 7, and we also know that both brackets have to be positive because of that middle sign. So we're always reading backwards. So multiply to give me 12, add to give me 7, and both brackets are positive, right? So what I've done here is often, this is the way I do it, I set it up as a little table. Now remember with factoring, you're doing a lot of stuff, but the answer is only one line. So it kind of seems you almost feel like you're defeating something in a sense, but you're really not. Okay, let's see. I guess I don't have anything in there, and that's all right. So let's take a look. So we want it to multiply to give us 12 and add. So that's what I do to give me 7. Okay, so usually what I do here is my multiplication facts. This is where this comes in. So what two numbers multiply to give me 12? Well, there's 12 and 1, but obviously they don't add to give me 7. There is 2 and 6. If I do 2 and 6, so some of the stuff you could do in your head, 2 and 6, when I add those two together, what do I get? I get 8, so it cannot be that one. So what other multiplication fact? Well, 3 and 4. If I add 3 and 4 together, what do I get? I get 7, and that is what I want. I want to have the 7, so those are the two numbers that are going to be in my bracket. So literally what I do is I take my two brackets, and remember both of them are going to start with an X. One's going to have a 3, and one's going to have a 4. The reason it's adding is because it's a plus 7. All right, so let's do some other ones. Okay, again, remember we're reading backwards. All right, so again, multiply to give me 10. Again, it's going to add to give me 7. Very similar to the last one, except this time it's telling me that both brackets have to be negative. Why do both brackets have to be negative? They both have to be negative because of the minus 7 here. So again, I'm using very similar numbers. Okay, so multiplication facts of 10 that add to give me 7. Well, 10 and 1 is not going to do it. So what about 5 and 2? 5 and 2, when I add those two numbers together, I get my 7. So my bracket is going to contain a 5 and a 2 with an X at the beginning, separated by subtracting. Right? But notice I'm doing an awful lot of talking when I'm factoring these. And so when you're doing it, you're almost talking to yourself. Okay, you don't have to talk out loud. So, multiplying by 10, adding to give me 7. Both brackets must be negative. So then what happens when it's not adding? So that's the next page that we're going to look at. So this time when we look at it, and I'll bring up the screen, the two brackets will have different signs. Okay, so it means that, I could have a positive and negative or negative and positive. The reason being is when I do FOIL, I want this number to be negative and negative C number. That means that the brackets have to be different. So the other thing, so there's another step in this, the factor that is the largest will have the same sign as B. So it's possible that B is negative, then the biggest number is going to be negative. If it's positive, the biggest number is going to be positive. So let's actually look at a few questions, and that way you'll see what I mean by that. Okay, same kind of process, however, we also read backwards. All right, so when I look at this one, 18. So it has to multiply to give me 18. Subtracting. So it needs to subtract to give me 3. So I'm just going to circle the subtracting, and I want 3. And then the biggest number is going to be positive because it's a plus 3. So the largest number has to be positive. Okay, let's look at multiplication facts, and when I subtract them, I get 3. Okay, now 18 has a lot of different multiplication facts, so I might have to do a little bit more work here. So I always start with the most common multiplication fact of 18, and that's usually not 18 times 1. Usually it's things such as 9 and 2. When I subtract 9 and 2, I get 7, right? And that's not what I want. So then I think of other multiplication facts of 18. Well, there's also 6 times 3. When I subtract 6 and 3, I end up with 3. So that's what I want. Now, which one of these is the largest one? Well, 6 or 3? Well, obviously 6 is. So that means 6 has to be the one that's positive, and the 3 has to be negative in the bracket. So again, what we end up with is there is our 6 and our 3. 6 was the largest, so it has to be positive, and the 3 has to be negative. Okay, so let's go on to the next question. Again, reading backwards. The two numbers have to equal 18. Okay, so they have to multiply to give me 18. They have to subtract to give me 3. So I need to subtract, and I need to have the number 3. And the largest number in this case has to be negative. Okay, so we have the largest has to be negative. Okay, again, multiplication facts of 18. Well, do you know what? If I compare these two questions, they're almost identical, except this one is plus 3x, this is minus 3x. So my 6 and 3 will work exactly the same. Okay, and I don't know what happened to my 6. Poor 6 disappeared. Except this time, I want the largest number to be negative. Well, that would be the 6. That means that would have to be positive. Okay, so that's how the difference is between the two. Okay, next question. Okay, again, must multiply to give me 40. Must subtract to give me 3. And the largest number is negative. Okay, so I'm just going to fill up my table. All right, so usually what I have down here on the right-hand side, usually I don't write down, obviously, on a question. The little table here, often I do if I need to figure something out. Now, multiplication facts of 40. Again, quite a few of them. There's 4 times 10. When I subtract those, I get 6, which I know is not what I want. So what other multiplication facts are there for 40? Well, I think 5 goes into 40. 5 goes into 40 8 times. When I subtract these two, I end up with a 3, which is what I do want. So I know I'm going to have two brackets. One's going to have a 5 and one's going to have an 8. The largest has to be negative. So which is largest, the 5 or the 8? Well, obviously the 8 is. So that means that my 8 is going to be negative, meaning my 5 has to be positive. All right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to mix up some questions. So let's look at the next question. I have a 2x squared plus 8x plus 6. Well, uh-oh. Notice I tried to fool you here. Because first of all, there's a common factor. You always want to check for that. And the common factor is 2, because 2 goes in each one of those. So I'm going to take out a 2. I'm left with an x squared plus 4x. And then we have plus 3. Right? So sometimes you might have to do a couple steps. Common factors out. Again, I need to read backwards. So the two numbers must multiply to give me 6. They must add to give me 8. And both brackets are going to be positive. Okay, numbers that multiply to give me 6. Well, there's 3 and 2. Okay, oh, sorry, I did that one wrong. Did anyone catch me? Yes, I did. Okay, so I'm going back here. I shouldn't have been looking at this line. I should have been looking at this one. Sorry about that, but I'm not going to stop my video. So they must multiply to give me 3. They must add to give me 4. I knew I did something wrong because I couldn't come up with the numbers I wanted. Okay, so multiplication facts of 3. Well, there's really only one, 3 and 1. If I add 3 and 1 together, do I get 4? Yes. What happens if I added these and I didn't get my 4? It means that this is where I would stop. It means I wouldn't be able to factor any further. All right, so again, because I have a common factor, it has to stay out front. I have an x plus a 3 and an x plus a 1. Okay. Next question. Okay, two numbers multiply to give me 12. They subtract to give me 1x. Both brackets are positive because of that positive sign there. Okay, multiplication facts, when I subtract them, I get 1, and they must multiply to give 12. Okay, so in a sense, it's kind of a guessing and checking in a sense, but also it's educated guess. So I'm thinking 4 and 3. 4 and 3, when I subtract them, I get 1, so that's what I want. And the biggest one has to be 4, which has to be a positive number. All right, so I have my 4 and my 3. The biggest one has to be positive because of the plus sign. All right, hopefully I didn't confuse you on that second last one there. Okay, so have some fun. Make sure that you're asking questions. It's really important. The more that you factor, the better you'll get at it and the easier it'll come to you.